All right. Hi there. Welcome to the archives. So I'm staying in line with the theme of Toronto. Um, as the Jays have made the World Series, I'm using this as an opportunity to jump on the bandwagon and do some book shares on Toronto writers, Toronto artists, computer contributors to Toronto culture in terms of Black Toronto culture. Like I said in the other video, to be from Toronto, I would say, is to be influenced by obviously many cultures, right? But including African culture, Somalis are also a big influence. I would say West Africans also have a big influence on Toronto culture, but hands down, it's the Caribbeans, right? The Caribbean people have a really big influence on how we as Torontonians um, just kind of present ourselves. The language, the lingo, the words we use, it is very much heavily influenced by Toronto culture, by Jamaican culture. And so I wanted to take this opportunity, especially in the wake of Hurricane Melissa, to just big up the Jamaican Canadian community, right? Um, the JCA is a really huge part of Toronto culture. I again I haven't lived in Toronto proper in well, I mean I was back for a short stint, but I left in 2013. I went back in 2017, 2018, and then I left again in 2020. But Toronto girl, mostly West End girl. I grew up in Brampton when I first arrived in Canada as a little girl. We lived in the West End. Uh, yeah, sorry, hold on. We lived in the West End, and so the Finch Strip was home. I went to St. Wilfrid's for a little bit. Um, like I said, just down the street at St. Andrews is where we spent a lot of um, my time going to church there. And then we moved out to Brampton. So I'm more of a 905 girl, although typically, actually, I'm more of a country girl in terms of then we moved to Orangeville. And so when people are like, Dorothy's not from Toronto. She's from Orangeville. I mean, you're not wrong, but like you're also low key wrong. Um, so I've kind of moved all over the place. I've been in Ottawa for, like I said, over a decade as well too. But Toronto, I have a complicated relationship with Toronto. What does Drake say? Hardly home, but always repping. Hardly home. So this one is about the Jamaicans. So we're gonna focus. The first book I'm gonna share is Jamaica and the Canadian Experience. This is one of my copies. Jamaica and the Canadian Experience, a multiculturalizing presence. This came out, I believe, in 2012. Like I said, I've never really dated, but anytime I really talk to people, it's mostly been Jamaicans. Again, maybe that's like a fetish, but I think it's also just Toronto. It's just if you're in the black community in Toronto, it's the Jamaicans are usually, at least for me, the good ones. No shade to all the others, right? Especially the Africans. No shade, no disrespect. But for me, the Jamaicans have always had my heart. Um, so Jamaica and the Canadian Experience. I think I went to this book launch. I think Jerome took me to this book launch. I was talking to a Jamaican guy at the time, who was at York. And so, yeah, this came out in 2012. Jamaica in the Canadian Experience, a Multiculturalizing Presence, is edited by Dr. Carl E. James and Dr. Andrea Davis. And so it came out, this was when Jamaica celebrated its 50th. So there was Jamaica at 50. Jamaica got its independence from the British in 1962. So this came out in 2012. It was 50 years. This is Jump for Jamaica. So Jamaica 50 celebration recognizes Jamaica in the Canadian experience as an important contribution to the celebration of Jamaica's 50th anniversary of independence. By showcasing Jamaicans and the contributions we have made to Canada, this anthology presents a commemorative legacy of the successes of Jamaican communities in Canada and the possibilities that Canada has afforded them. Jamaica 50 Celebration is a non-for-profit organization established under the patronage of the Jamaican High Commissioner, Her Excellency Sheila Sealy um, Monteith, and the Jamaican Council General of Toronto, Seth George Ramocan. The organization is made up of a group of dedicated volunteers who aim through charitable and other social, cultural initiatives and events to highlight the positive impact and influence that Jamaicans have had on Canada, showcase the best of our people, art, and culture, place a spotlight on Jamaica's accomplishments, and encourage youth of Jamaican heritage to become better informed. The most important legacy that can result from this year of independence celebration is to encourage and enable future Jamaican Canadian leaders and their continued advancement in the Canadian mosaic. It's an important part of Jamaica 50 mission, a book to help support our future generation of leaders, providing youth with resources, mentorship, and the tools necessary to continue the success of the independence won by their forebears for another 50 years and beyond. So this is an anthology. So it has different parts, different sections. So for instance, part 5 is Canada from east to west. Um, there's so many different people. Some of the contributors, what is this? Pearson, Toronto Pearson. Oh, I just found a plane ticket. Where was I going? Oh, Washington. Washington National. That's so random. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I guess I used a bookmark. 2012. Where did I travel in 2012? I just found an Air Canada, my boarding pass. So random. My boarding pass. Air Canada boarding pass. I was going to Washington. What was the date of this? Who knows? Sorry, I got distracted. There's a lot of contributors on here. Dwight Barrett, Sharon Morgan Beckford, Kevon Anthony Cameron, Mark V. Campbell, Marianne Chambers, Maxine Clark, Andrea Davis, Cecile DePass, Javon Fearon, Avis Glaze, Sir Kenneth Hall, so many people. Melanie York, Kayan Williams, Ewart Walters, Barrington Walker, Lisa Tomlinson, Leanne Taylor, Mary Lou, Stuart Haynes, Eddie Shaw, Cameron, Olive Sr., Joan Samuels, Dennis, Robert Pitter, Sheila Seeley, Desmond Miller, Rachel Manley, Alexander Lovell, Armand Labarge, Tamara Kitosha, Nyla Kitela May, Royston James is in here. There are so many contributions in this book. So if you are looking to get a better understanding of the Jamaican Canadian experience, I would definitely highly recommend this book. Um, huge Toronto presence in this as well too. Another book I wanted to big up is Dancehall Rebel by Stacey Robinson. See the Jamaican flag right there. Dancehall Rebel. Stacey Robinson. So, Stacey was born in Toronto, guided by her Jamaican heritage. Stacey Robinson's creative content highlights contemporary Canadian life and Caribbean culture across the diaspora. She has also produced several literary events and workshops for writers. Stacey lives in Scarborough, Ontario. I thought Stacey maybe might be in Ottawa now, but Stacey, so this is Dancehall Rebel. After her father's sudden death rocks the Toronto DJ community, Denise turns to DJing to find comfort. But she has a problem. Denise is queer, and the reggae and dancehall music she loves and grew up on often preaches homophobia, and so does her family. When she moves to Ottawa for her first year of university, Denise sees an opportunity to build her own support network. But first, she must reconcile how she was raised with her identity. to have pride in where she's from and who she is today. So for the queer kids, the queer Jamaican kids who are trying to find their way, especially if you're a Christian and your community says it's an abomination, this might be a good book to read to find some belonging and home. Uh, in this book, Denise goes back to Jamaica. So you do see a lot of Jamaican actually on in Jamaica as well as Mandeville, Manchester, Jamaica. She goes home. She arrives at the Norman Manley International Airport, and so yes, you get a taste of Toronto, Ottawa, and Jamaica as also. So this is Stacey Robinson in line with talking about queer Jamaicans' influence on Canadian culture. This is not a book, but recently I was listening to DeBee Young's 333 album. I wanted to share this. So DeBee, Anita Africa, Young. I really, really enjoyed this. I got this in 2011. This came out in 2011. I got this in 2011. So it was a CD. DeBee Young, for queer Jamaican folks, again, in Toronto who are looking to find their way. This would be a good album. Staceyann Chin, I wanted to share, this is a book I have. Staceyann Chin is also a queer Jamaican artist. I know that New York claims Stacey, but I feel like Toronto also low key. I don't know. I claim Staceyann as a Toronto person, folk. Um, I don't know. I believe Staceyann lived in Toronto for some time, perhaps. Staceyann Chin is a Jamaican writer, political activist, and performer known for her one-woman show and the Tony Award winning Russell Simmons Deaf Poetry Jam. Chin speaks all over the world and has written for many publications, including the New York Times Magazine and Essence. Chin credits her accomplishments to her grandmother's hard work. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. But this is a really, really, really good book. The Other Side of Paradise. I think someone got this for me as a gift. I think Suzanne got this for me as a gift. Who got this for me? Yeah, it's a gift. Who got it? Let me see. Who got this for me? Dr. D. Oh, Staceyann signed this. 4D. Love and Power. Staceyann. So Staceyann signed it. Love and Power. I used to work with somebody who grew up with Staceyann. How is Raquel doing? So, Raquel, another Jamaican, queer Jamaican, big in the Toronto sexual health movement. So, The Other Side of Paradise. No one knew Staceyann's mother was pregnant until a dangerously small baby was born on the floor of her grandmother's house in Lottery, Jamaica, on Christmas Day. Staceyann's mother did not want her. Her father was not present. No one except her grandmother thought Staceyann would survive. It was her grandmother who nurtured and protected and provided for Staceyann and her older brother in the early years. But when the three were separated, Staceyann was thrust alone into an unfamiliar and dysfunctional home in Paradise, Jamaica. There she faced far greater troubles than absent parents. So, armed with a fierce determination and uncommon intelligence, she discovered a way to break out of this harshly unforgiving world. Staceyann Chin, acclaimed and iconic performance artist, now brings her extraordinary talents to the page in a brave, lyrical, and fiercely candid memoir about growing up in Jamaica. She plumps tender and unsettling memories as she writes about drifting from one home to the next, coming out as a lesbian, and finding the man she believes to be her father and ultimately her voice. Hers is an unforgettable story told with grace, humor, and courage. So again, this is The Other Side of Paradise, which is Staceyann Chin's memoir. Um, so this is Staceyann, and this is the cover. And one more I wanted to share. This isn't specifically. This is OG. Like, if you are from Toronto and you don't know who Dionne Brand is, shame on you. Um, so this one's not specifically Jamaican, it's Caribbean. More so, there's an influence of Trinidad and Tobago. Um, but and it's just this is one of my favorite books. Dionne Brand is like I don't just if you're talking about Toronto artists, Toronto writers, Dionne Brand is that person. So this is a map to the door of no return, notes on belonging. In this insightful book of discovery, Dionne Brand explores the relevance and nature of identity and belonging in a culturally diverse and changing world, drawing on cartography, narratives of childhood in the Caribbean, journeys across the Canadian landscape, African ancestry, histories, politics, philosophies, and literature. A map to the door of no return sketches the shifting borders of home and nation and the connection to place in Canada and the world beyond. So again, because queer folks tend to be erased and silenced, we don't often see them as being centered. But you cannot talk about Toronto without talking about queer folks. I'm sorry. This is the queer community in Toronto has really, really influenced the culture. Um, some of our best writers are queer, whether the church folks want to admit it or not. And so this is why you've noticed like the theme of a lot of incredible queer folks, including Dionne Brand. And so Dionne Brand won the Governor General's Award for Poetry and the Trillium Award in 1997 for Land to Light On. Her novel In Another Place, Not Here, was shortlisted for the Chapters Book in Canada First Novel Award and the Trillium Award, and was published in the US and the UK to great acclaim. She lives in Toronto. And so I wanted to just share the beginning of this because this is like this book. When I tell you I have marked this book down, there's just like I feel like there's barely any pages where there's not writing on the sides. Like there's so many nuggets. There's just so many nuggets, so I can't see. But I feel like I have underlined every single page, stars everywhere. Like it's just she is just this book is. So I just want to share a little bit of the beginning because it's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. A circumstantial account of a state of things. My grandfather said he knew what people we came from. I reeled off all the names I knew: Yoruba, Igbo, Ashanti, Mandingo. He said no to all of them, saying that he would know if he heard it. I was 13. I was anxious for him to remember. I pestered him for days. He told me to stop bothering him and that he would remember. Or stop bothering, or else he would not remember. I hovered about him in any room in which he rested. I followed him around, asking him if he wanted me to do this or that for him, clean his glasses, polish his shoes, bring his tea. I studied him intently when he came home. I searched the gray bristles of his mustache for any flicker that might suggest he was about to speak. He raised his Sunday Guardian newspaper to block my view. He shooed me away, telling me to find some book to read or work to do. At times, it seemed as if Papa was on the brink of remembering. I imagined pulling the word off his tongue. If only I knew the first syllable. Like, it's just poetic. Just Dionne Brand is just chef's kiss. So again, this is what I was saying about the Trinidad. I scoured the San Fernando library and found no other lists of the names of the time. Having no way of finding other names, I could only repeat the ones I knew, asking him if he was sure it wasn't Yoruba. What about Ashanti? I couldn't help myself. I wanted to be either one. I had heard that they were noble people, but I could also be Igbo. I had heard they were gentle, and I had followed the war in Biafra. I was on the other side. I was on their side. Papa never remembered. Each week he came, I asked him, had he remembered? Each week he told me no. Then I stopped asking. He was disappointed. I was disappointed. We lived after that, this mutual disappointment. It was a rift between us. It gathered into a kind of estrangement. After that, he grew old. I grew young. A small space opened in me. So I wanted to just end on this just because I couldn't talk about Caribbean and Toronto influence and not talk about Dionne Brand, right? And I think this book kind of ties it all together in terms of it moves through the Caribbean, it moves into Africa, and just this notion of like, where do you belong, right? Where do you belong when you're from the Caribbean? Um, and that is home, but at the same time, you're still trying to figure out your ancestry. And then you're also moving across the pond into places like Canada. Um, so, yeah, just wanted to share some Jamaican texts. Jamaica in the Canadian Experience, a multiculturalizing presence, edited by Carly James and Andrea Davis. Dancehall Rebel by Stacey Robinson. The Other Side of Paradise, Staceyann Chin. Dionne Brand, A Map to the Door of No Return, and then To Be Young 333 album. Okay, so again, go Jays go. Thinking of the Jamaican and Caribbean community, especially those in Toronto, who for me have been really influential, right? Jamaicans have really, really been influential in my upbringing in Toronto. I've gone to JCA events. Some of my best friends have been Jamaican. Some of my worst enemies have been Jamaican. Some of my family, for real, for real, for real, have been Jamaican. Anybody I've ever talked to and dated, majority of them have been Jamaicans, and so I have really, to know me is to know that I'm actually really, really heavily influenced by the Jamaican culture in Toronto. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, especially during this time that they're going through a lot. And also as well as that the Toronto Blue Jays is on the main stage in the World Series. To know Toronto is to know that, like, again, we are heavily influenced by the Caribbean community, specifically the Jamaican community. So, yeah, just wanted to share some of those books. Until next time, in solidarity, okay?